When the Red Hulk's rage ignites the jungle, even the mountains tremble. From the mist-shrouded cliffs, King Kong descends, not as a guardian, but as a conqueror. Ancient beasts, mutant predators, and human warlords are drawn into a throne war that will scorch the earth. Every roar, every punch, every drop of blood pushes the jungle closer to total annihilation. Only one will stand atop the burning canopy, and the jungle will never be the same. The jungle was never silent, but tonight it was holding its breath. Moonlight spilled through the canopy in fractured silver beams, painting the leaves in ghostly light. Somewhere deep within, a low, guttural rumble rolled through the earth, rattling the roots of ancient trees. It wasn't thunder. It was him, the Red Hulk. His massive frame moved like a living avalanche, each step crushing ferns, snapping trunks, and sending startled flocks of birds screaming into the night. His skin glowed faintly in the darkness, a molten crimson under the moon, steam rising from his body as if the jungle itself was trying to cool his fury. He wasn't here to hunt. He wasn't here to hide. He was here to claim. Far above, on a jagged cliff that cut into the clouds, another shadow stirred. The wind carried the scent of blood and fire to nostrils the size of dinner plates. A deep, resonant growl rolled from the throat of the jungle's true monarch, King Kong. For centuries, Kong had ruled this land, not through constant battle, but through presence. His was the law of the canopy, the river, the mountain. But tonight, the air was different. The jungle's heartbeat was off rhythm. Something alien had entered his kingdom, and it was challenging him. The first encounter wasn't planned. It was inevitable. Red Hulk tore through a grove of colossal kapok trees, his fists smashing aside trunks as thick as towers. He was searching for what, even he didn't fully know. But the rage inside him needed an outlet, and the jungle was offering resistance. A shadow fell over him. Not from the moon, from above. Kong dropped from the cliff like a meteor, the ground exploding beneath his landing. The shockwave sent leaves spiraling into the air, animals scattering in every direction. For a moment, the two titans simply stared at each other. Red Hulk's breath came in hot, heavy bursts. Kong's chest rose and fell like a storm tide. Then, without warning, Kong struck first. A massive, open-handed swipe caught Red Hulk across the jaw, sending him crashing through a wall of bamboo. The sound was like a cannon blast. But Red Hulk didn't stay down. He came back harder. The fight was chaos. Kong's fists were like wrecking balls, each blow shaking the ground. Red Hulk countered with bone-cracking punches that made the air itself shudder. Trees toppled like matchsticks. The river nearby boiled from the heat, radiating off Hulk's skin. Every impact was a viral moment waiting to happen, the kind of clash that would burn itself into legend. Kong roared, a sound so deep it rattled the bones of creatures miles away. Red Hulk answered with a bellow that seemed to tear the night in half. The jungle was no longer holding its breath. It was screaming. But then, something unexpected. From the shadows, dozens of glowing eyes appeared. The fight had drawn attention, not just from the jungle's usual predators, but from something older, something hungrier. The skull serpents. Massive, pale-scale constrictors with skull-like heads, their bodies thick enough to crush a jeep. They slithered into the clearing, drawn by the vibrations of the battle. For the first time, Red Hulk and Kong paused. Not in truce, but in recognition of a shared threat. The serpents struck. One coiled around Red Hulk's arm, its fangs sinking deep. Another wrapped around Kong's leg, pulling with bone-snapping force. The titans fought back, not together but side by side. Hulk tore a serpent in half with his bare hands, its blood hissing as it hit his superheated skin. Kong grabbed another by the tail and smashed it into a boulder until nothing remained but pulp. The jungle floor became a slaughterhouse. When the last serpent fell, the two giants stood among the carnage, chests heaving, eyes locked. No words, no peace, only the understanding that this was far from over. Kong beat his chest once, a sound like war drums, and retreated into the mist. Red Hulk watched him go, his fists still clenched, his rage far from spent. Above them, the moon slipped behind clouds, and the jungle returned to its uneasy heartbeat. But every creature within it knew the war for the throne had begun. The jungle did not sleep after the clash. Every creature, from the smallest tree frog to the apex predators, moved with a nervous urgency. The air was thick with the scent of blood and scorched earth. Somewhere in the distance, a waterfall thundered, but even its roar seemed muted, as if the land itself was listening for the next move. Red Hulk stood alone in the clearing, steam rising from his skin in ghostly tendrils. His fists flexed, knuckles cracking like gunshots. The skull serpents were dead, but their presence meant something. They were not creatures that hunted so far from their lairs without reason. Something had driven them here. Something bigger than hunger. He turned his head toward the mountains. Kong's silhouette was gone, swallowed by the mist. But the memory of that first strike, the sheer force behind it, burned in Hulk's mind. This wasn't just another opponent. This was a rival who could match him blow for blow. And that was exactly what he wanted. High above, Kong moved through the canopy with a speed that belied his size. His massive hands gripped vines and branches, his weight shaking the forest with every swing. He wasn't retreating out of fear. He was repositioning. The Red One was strong, yes, but strength alone didn't win wars. The jungle was Kong's weapon, and he knew every inch of it. He reached a ridge overlooking the river valley. From here, he could see the destruction below. Trees flattened, soil churned into mud, the bodies of the serpents lying like pale scars against the green. His nostrils flared. This was not just a fight for dominance. This was a fight for survival. Because if the Red One stayed, the jungle would burn. Far to the east, beyond the river, a different set of eyes watched the chaos. Human eyes. A small team of mercenaries, armed with high-caliber rifles and experimental tech, crouched in the shadows of a camouflaged outpost. Their leader, a scarred man with a voice like gravel, lowered his binoculars and smiled. 2 gods in one jungle, he muttered, and we're going to make them bleed for us. Behind him, crates of weapons were being unpacked. Not for hunting, for provoking. The plan was simple. Push the Titans into a war so brutal, so destructive, that neither would walk away whole. Then, when both were weakened, move in and claim the carcasses for the highest bidder. The jungle wasn't just a battlefield now. It was a gold mine. Back in the clearing, Red Hulk began to move again, his heavy steps shaking loose showers of leaves. Somewhere ahead, Kong's roar split the night. Not a challenge this time, but a warning. The war for the jungle throne had only just begun, and the next time they met, there would be no interruptions. The jungle was awake now, not in the way it stirred at dawn, with birdsong and the rustle of leaves. This was a fevered, restless wakefulness. The canopy whispered with the movement of predators, the rivers churned with unseen shapes, and the air itself seemed to vibrate with anticipation. Somewhere in the mist, Kong moved like a phantom. His massive frame was a shadow among shadows, his breathing controlled, his steps deliberate. He was not charging blindly toward the Red One. Not yet. He was hunting. The mercenaries' game. On the eastern ridge, the mercenary camp had transformed into a war staging ground. Floodlights cut through the darkness, generators hummed, and the metallic scent of gun oil hung heavy in the air. The scarred leader, known only as Voss, stood over a holographic map projected onto a steel crate. Red dots pulsed where seismic sensors had picked up the Titans' movements. They're circling each other, Voss said, his voice low but sharp. Good. Keep them moving toward the choke point. A younger mercenary frowned. Sir, if they meet there, the collateral. Voss cut him off with a glare. Collateral is profit. The more they destroy, the more the buyers will pay for what's left. Behind them, a weapons tech was assembling something massive, a launcher the size of a small car, its barrel lined with experimental rounds designed to pierce even Titan hide. The plan was simple. Lure Red Hulk and Kong into the Grave Valley, a narrow gorge where movement would be restricted. Then hit them both with enough firepower to cripple them. But the jungle had a way of rewriting plans. Red Hulk's march. Red Hulk was not subtle. His path through the jungle was a scar of destruction, shattered trunks, churned mud, and the occasional carcass of something foolish enough to challenge him. But there was a method to his chaos. He was following something. The skull serpents had not been random. Their scent lingered in the air, mingled with something else, a musk that was older, heavier, and far more dangerous. He didn't know it yet, but he was tracking the alpha predator. The alpha was a legend even in Kong's time, a beast older than the jungle itself, a reptilian colossus with jagged spines and a roar that could shatter stone. It had been dormant for decades, buried in the swamps to the south. But the vibrations of the Titans' battle had awakened it, and now it was moving north. Kong's perspective. From his vantage point high in the canopy, Kong saw the signs before anyone else. Birds fleeing in massive flocks. Herds of jungle grazers stampeding in unnatural patterns. The ground trembling in a rhythm that didn't match Red Hulk's march. Something else was coming. Kong's instinct screamed at him. This was not the time to fight the Red One. Not yet. If the Alpha reached the heart of the jungle, it would not stop until everything was dead. But pride was a dangerous thing, and Kong's pride had been wounded. He remembered the heat of Red Hulk's skin, the force of his blows, the way the ground had cracked beneath them. This was not an enemy he could ignore. So he made a choice. He would intercept the Red One before the Alpha arrived. End the threat now, before the jungle became a three-way battlefield. The first trap. Voss's mercenaries had been busy. Along the narrow river pass that led toward Grave Valley, they had rigged explosives beneath the waterline. Motion sensors were hidden among the reeds, and drones hovered high above, their cameras feeding live footage back to the camp. When Red Hulk reached the pass, the sensors lit up. Target acquired. A mercenary whispered into his comm. Voss smiled. Detonate on my mark. But before the order could be given, the water erupted. A massive scaled tail whipped out of the river, sending a wall of water crashing into the trees. The alpha predator had arrived early. Its head broke the surface, a jagged crown of bone and spines, eyes like molten gold, jaws lined with teeth the size of swords. It roared, and the sound was so deep it rattled the fillings in the mercenary's teeth. Red Hulk turned toward it, his lips curling into something between a snarl and a grin. Chaos unleashed. The alpha lunged, its jaws snapping shut where Red Hulk had been a second earlier. Hulk countered with a punch that landed squarely on the creature's snout, the impact sending shockwaves through the water. From a tree lean, Kong watched. His muscles tensed. This was his jungle, and no outsider, not even the Red One, would face the alpha alone. With a roar that split the night, Kong leapt from the canopy, landing on the alpha's back. The beast thrashed, its tail smashing through trees like matchsticks. For a brief, surreal moment, Red Hulk and Kong fought the same enemy. Hulk's fists hammered the alpha's jaw while Kong's massive arms locked around its neck, trying to force it down. The river boiled with their struggle. The mercenary's mistake. From the ridge, Voss cursed. This isn't the plan. Fire anyway. The launcher roared, sending a round screaming into the chaos. It struck the alpha in the flank, exploding in a burst of fire and shrapnel. The beast bellowed in pain and turned its fury toward the ridge. In seconds, it was charging up the slope, smashing through the mercenary line like paper. Men screamed, weapons clattered, and the jungle lit up with muzzle flashes. Voss barely had time to grab his rifle before the alpha's tail swept through the camp, sending him and half his men tumbling into the undergrowth. The turning point. Back in the river, Kong and Red Hulk faced each other again, chest deep in churning water. The alpha was gone for now, chasing the mercenaries into the dark. They stood in silence for a heartbeat, the only sound the rush of the current and the distant screams from the ridge. Then Kong stepped forward, water cascading off his fur. He beat his chest once, not in challenge but in warning. Red Hulk's eyes narrowed. He understood. The alpha was the greater threat. For now. But the truce was temporary. Without another word, they turned and began moving upriver, each knowing the next battle would decide more than just the jungle's throne. Because now, the war had three kings. The river carried the scent of blood downstream. a crimson ribbon winding through the jungle's veins. Somewhere ahead, the Alpha's roars echoed, not in challenge now, but in rage. The mercenaries had wounded it, but not enough to kill. And a wounded predator was the most dangerous kind. Red Hulk trudged through the shallows, water hissing against his overheated skin. Every muscle in his body was coiled, ready. He could feel the tremors underfoot. The Alpha was still close. Kong moved parallel to him along the bank, his massive frame weaving between trees like a shadow, stitched to the jungle itself. They didn't speak, didn't signal, but each knew the other's pace. For now, their paths ran side by side. High above, the canopy shivered. A flock of hornbills burst into the air, their cries sharp and frantic. Something was moving fast through the treetops, not the Alpha, but smaller shapes. The mercenaries' drones. One zipped low over the water, its camera lens glinting in the moonlight. Red Hulk's eyes snapped to it. With a single brutal throw, he hurled a boulder the size of a jeep. The drone exploded midair, raining sparks into the river. Kong grunted in approval, but his gaze stayed fixed ahead. The Alpha's trail was fresh now. Broken branches, deep gouges in the mud, and the stench of reptilian musk so strong it burned the nostrils. They reached a clearing where the river widened into a shallow basin. The moon broke through the clouds, silvering the water. And there it was. The Alpha stood at the far edge, its spines glistening, its golden eyes locked on them. The wound from the mercenary's weapon smoked faintly, but it didn't slow the beast. If anything, it seemed to fuel its fury. It roared, a sound that rolled across the basin like a physical force, bending reeds and rippling the water. Red Hulk stepped forward, fists clenched. Kong's chest swelled as he beat it once, twice, the sound like war drums in the night. The Alpha lunged. The impact was cataclysmic. Hulk met it head-on, his punch slamming into the creature's jaw with enough force to send a shockwave through the basin. Kong came in from the side, his massive arms locking around the Alpha's neck, trying to drag it down. The water churned into a frothing maelstrom. The Alpha's tail whipped around, catching Kong in the ribs and sending him crashing into the shallows. Hulk seized the opening, driving both fists into the beast's skull. For a heartbeat, it seemed they might overpower it. Then the Alpha's jaws snapped shut on Hulk's shoulder, lifting him bodily from the water. Kong roared and charged, but before he could reach them, the Alpha spun, dragging Hulk with it, and plunged into the deeper channel of the river. The current swallowed them both, leaving only ripples and the fading echo of the Alpha's roar. Kong stood alone in the moonlit basin, chest heaving, eyes burning with fury. The hunt turned savage. The river swallowed them whole. Red Hulk's body slammed against jagged rocks beneath the surface as the Alpha dragged him deeper into the black current. The water roared in his ears, bubbles exploding from his mouth as he fought to wrench free from the beast's jaws. The Alpha's teeth were like serrated steel, clamped into his shoulder with crushing force. Hulk's skin, already superheated from rage, hissed against the cold water, sending up clouds of steam that swirled in the moonlight above. He drove his fist into the Alpha's eye. Once, twice. The third blow made the beast release him with a guttural bellow that vibrated through the riverbed. Hulk kicked upward, breaking the surface with a gasp that sounded more like a growl. Kong's pursuit. On the bank, Kong had already moved. The moment Hulk vanished beneath the surface, Kong leapt into the river, his massive arms cleaving through the current. His eyes locked on the dark shape thrashing ahead. The Alpha, still half submerged, its spine slicing through the water like the dorsal fins of a nightmare. Kong's hand closed around the creature's tail. Muscles bulged as he yanked, dragging the Alpha toward the shallows. The beast twisted violently, its tail whipping around to slam into Kong's ribs. The impact sent a shockwave through his chest, but he didn't let go. Red Hulk surged forward from the other side, his fists hammering into the Alpha's flank. The water churned into a frothing storm, waves slapping against the banks. For a moment, it looked like the two titans might tear the Alpha apart between them. But the jungle had other plans. The ambush. From the tree-line, a sharp whomp split the night. A projectile streaked through the air, trailing a faint blue glow. It struck the alpha's neck and detonated in a burst of electric arcs. The beast shrieked, convulsing violently. Kong and Hulk both turned toward the source. On the ridge above, Voss and his surviving mercenaries had regrouped. The massive launcher was back in action, now loaded with experimental neuroshock rounds, designed to overload the nervous systems of creatures the size of buildings. "Light them up," Voss barked. The next volley wasn't aimed at the alpha. It was aimed at both titans, pain and fury. The first round hit Red Hulk square in the chest. Electricity danced across his skin, muscles locking for a split second before his rage burned through the paralysis. He roared, the sound shaking loose leaves from the canopy. Kong took a round to the shoulder, the shock making his massive frame shudder. His grip on the alpha's tail loosened, and the beast seized the chance to dive back into the depths. The water swallowed it again, leaving only ripples and the stench of ozone. The shift in the battlefield. The mercenaries didn't stop firing. Explosions ripped through the riverbank, sending mud and water spraying into the air. Hulk charged toward the ridge, each step sending tremors through the ground. Kong followed, not in alliance, but in parallel fury. The mercenaries had made themselves part of the war, and in the jungle, that meant they were prey. Voss saw them coming and grinned. Bring them into the kill zone. The ridge wasn't just high ground, it was mined. The charge. Hulk hit the slope first, his fists smashing into the earth as he climbed. Mines detonated around him, fireballs lighting the night. Shrapnel pinged off his skin, leaving only shallow cuts that healed almost instantly. Kong came from the side, using the trees as cover. His massive hands tore through the trunks, uprooting them and hurling them like spears toward the ridge. One struck a mercenary square in the chest, sending him cartwheeling into the darkness. The survivors panicked, their formation breaking. Voss's last stand. Voss didn't run. He grabbed a heavy-caliber rifle from the ground and braced it against his shoulder. The weapon barked, each round slamming into Hulk's torso. The impact staggered him, not from damage but from sheer force. Kong reached the ridge first, his shadow falling over Voss like a storm cloud. The mercenary leader swung the rifle toward him, but Kong's hand closed around the weapon, crushing it like tin. Voss barely had time to register the sound of Hulk's footsteps before the red one was on him. The clash of three. Before either titan could finish Voss, the ground beneath them erupted. The alpha burst from the slope in an explosion of dirt and rock, its jaws snapping shut inches from Kong's face. It had circled beneath the ridge through an underground channel, using the chaos to ambush. Hulk reacted instantly, slamming both fists into the alpha's side. The beast reeled, but its tail lashed out, catching Hulk in the legs and sending him tumbling down the slope. Kong roared and tackled the alpha, the two of them rolling in a tangle of fur, scales, and teeth. The jungle burns. The fight spilled into the trees, each impact flattening swaths of jungle. Fires broke out where mercenary explosives had ignited dry undergrowth. The night filled with the crackle of flames, the crash of falling trees, and the unending roars of battle. Hulk rejoined the fray, his fists a blur as he hammered the alpha skull. Kong seized the beast's tail again, yanking it off balance. For a heartbeat, they were in sync, two predators working toward the same kill. Then the alpha twisted, its jaws snapping toward Hulk. Kong saw the opening and moved, but not to save him. He shoved Hulk aside and drove his own fist into the alpha's throat, forcing it back. Hulk hit the ground hard, his eyes blazing with fury. The breaking point. The alpha staggered, blood streaming from its mouth. It turned and fled into the burning jungle, disappearing into the smoke. Kong stood over the spot where it had been, chest heaving. Hulk rose slowly, his fists clenched. The temporary alliance was over. They faced each other in the flickering firelight, the air between them thick with heat and the scent of blood. Kong beat his chest once, a deep, resonant sound that echoed through the trees. Hulk stepped forward, the ground cracking beneath his feet. The jungle seemed to hold its breath again. the roar that split the night. Before they could clash, a sound rolled over the battlefield. Deeper, louder, and more primal than anything yet. It wasn't the Alpha. It wasn't either of them. From the far side of the jungle, something else had awakened. The ground trembled, the fires flickered, and the canopy shivered as the roar came again, closer this time. Kong's eyes narrowed. Hulk's lips curled into a grim smile. The war for the jungle throne had just gained a fourth contender. The fourth king. The roar rolled through the jungle like a shockwave, bending trees, scattering flocks, and silencing even the insects. It wasn't just sound, it was a declaration. Kong froze mid-step, his head tilting toward the source. Red Hulk's eyes narrowed, the corners of his mouth curling into something between anticipation and challenge. The alpha predator had been terrifying. This was something else. The arrival. From a far horizon, the canopy began to ripple, not from wind, but from something massive moving through it. Trees toppled in a straight line, their trunks snapping like matchsticks. The ground trembled harder with each passing second. Then it emerged. A colossal silhouette broke through the smoke and fire. A beast unlike any that had walked the jungle in living memory. Its body was plated in jagged obsidian armor, each step sinking deep into the earth. Twin tusks curved upward from a skull-like head, and its eyes burned with a cold, unnatural light. The jungle whispered its name in the language of fear. Garath, the Earthbreaker. Legend said Garath had once ruled the land before Kong's ancestors, before even the Alpha. It had vanished into the volcanic mountains centuries ago, sleeping beneath rivers of magma. Now the chaos of the Throne War had drawn it back. 3 kings, 1 battlefield. The Alpha's roar answered from somewhere in the burning jungle. Garath turned its head toward the sound, its tusks glinting in the firelight. Kong's chest rumbled with a low growl. This was no longer a war for dominance between two. It was a convergence of apex predators, each with a claim to the throne. Red Hulk stepped forward, his fists tightening. He didn't care about thrones. He cared about the fight. And Garath looked like the kind of fight that could burn the rage out of his bones, or stoke it into something unstoppable. The first clash. Garath didn't wait. With a bellow that split the night, it charged. The ground cracked beneath its weight, shock waves rippling outward. Hulk met it head-on, his punch colliding with Garath's armored skull in an impact that sent a ring of dust and debris blasting outward. The force drove Hulk back several steps, his heels carving trenches in the soil. Kong lunged in from the side, his massive fists hammering into Garath's flank. The beast barely flinched. Its tail, a spiked, mace-like appendage, whipped around, catching Kong in the side and sending him crashing through a burning tree. The Alpha returns. Before Hulk could press the attack, the Alpha burst from the tree-line, smoke and flame trailing from its spines. It slammed into Garath's other side, its jaws snapping at the armored plates. For a moment, the battlefield became a maelstrom. 4 titans in motion, each strike shaking the jungle to its roots. Hulk's fists hammered Garath's chest. Kong roared and leapt onto the Alpha's back, dragging it away from the Earthbreaker. Garath's tusks hooked into Hulk's torso, lifting him off the ground before slamming him into the dirt hard enough to crater it. The jungle's collapse. The mercenaries, what few remained, had retreated to the cliffs overlooking the chaos. Voss watched through binoculars, his face pale. "This isn't a war," he muttered. "It's the end of the jungle." Below, the fires spread faster, feeding on the dry undergrowth. The air shimmered with heat, ash falling like black snow. Animals fled in every direction, their cries drowned out by the roars of the titans. Temporary alliances. Kong tore the Alpha off its feet, slamming it into a boulder that shattered under the impact. Hulk staggered to his feet, blood running down his side where Garath's tusks had pierced him. Their eyes met across the chaos. No words, no truth spoken. But in that instant they understood. If Garath wasn't stopped now, there would be no jungle left to rule. Hulk charged Garath again, this time aiming low, his shoulder slamming into the beast's knee. Kong came in high, his fists raining down on Garath's skull. The Earthbreaker roared, its armored plates cracking under the combined assault. The Alpha lunged at Kong's back, but Hulk intercepted, grabbing the reptilian predator by the throat and hurling it into the burning river. Garath's wrath. Wounded but not beaten, Garath reared back, its tusks glowing red as molten cracks spread across its armor. With a deafening roar, it slammed both forelimbs into the ground. The earth split open. A shockwave tore through the battlefield, toppling trees and sending both Hulk and Kong sprawling. Lava bubbled up from the fissures, spilling into the burning jungle. The Alpha scrambled from the river, hissing, its spines glowing from the heat. All three titans now stood between Garath and the heart of the jungle, but none were allies. A standoff. The fires roared around them, the ground trembling with each breath. Garath's molten armor pulsed like a heartbeat. The Alpha's tail lashed, spraying embers. Kong's fist clenched, his chest heaving. Hulk's eyes burned with unspent fury. For kings, one jungle. The next move would decide who lived to see the dawn. Only one throne. The jungle was no longer a jungle. It was a battlefield of fire and ash. The canopy had collapsed in wide swaths, replaced by pillars of smoke that twisted into the night sky. Rivers boiled where lava spilled from Garath's fissures. The air was thick with the stench of scorched earth, blood, and molten rock. Four kings stood in the ruin: Red Hulk, King Kong, the Alpha Predator, and Garath the Earthbreaker. No more alliances. No more pauses. This was the final reckoning. The first strike. Garath moved first, its tusks glowing white-hot as it charged. The ground split beneath its steps, molten cracks racing outward. Kong met it head-on, his fists slamming into the Earthbreaker's armored skull. The impact sent a shockwave through the battlefield, knocking the Alpha sideways into a burning tree. Red Hulk didn't wait. He leapt high, his body a crimson blur, and came down with both fists on Garath's back. The armor cracked, shards of obsidian flying like shrapnel. The Earthbreaker roared, twisting violently and throwing Hulk into a smoldering crater. The Alpha's gambit. The Alpha saw its chance. It lunged at Kong, jaws snapping for his throat. Kong caught the beast mid-leap, muscles straining as he held it back. The Alpha's claws raked his chest, drawing deep furrows of blood. With a roar, Kong pivoted and hurled the Alpha into Garath's flank. The two monsters collided, tumbling through the burning undergrowth. Hulk was already moving again, his rage boiling hotter than the lava underfoot. He grabbed a fallen tree trunk, swung it like a club, and smashed it across the Alpha's head. The trunk splintered into 1,000 pieces. The battlefield shifts. The ground trembled, not from the Titan's blows, but from the earth itself giving way. One of Garath's fissures widened into a yawning chasm, swallowing trees and sending a river of lava surging toward the combatants. Kong leapt to higher ground, the heat searing his fur. Hulk didn't move. He planted his feet, let the lava wash around him, and used the molten flow as cover to charge Garath. The Earthbreaker swung its spiked tail, but Hulk caught it mid-swing, muscles bulging as he wrenched the beast off balance. Kong saw the opening and pounced, both fists slamming into Garath's jaw. The Earthbreaker reeled, tusks snapping one of the burning trees in half. The Alpha's last stand. The Alpha wasn't done. It lunged from the smoke, its spines glowing like molten blades. It slammed into Hulk, driving him back toward the chasm. Kong roared and grabbed the Alpha's tail, yanking it away from the edge. The reptilian predator twisted, its jaws snapping shut on Kong's forearm. Blood sprayed, sizzling as it hit the lava. Hulk surged forward, his fists smashing into the Alpha's ribs with enough force to lift it off the ground. Kong followed with a crushing blow to its skull. The Alpha staggered, swayed, and collapsed into the lava river. Its roar turned into a hiss as the molten rock swallowed it whole. 3 kings remained. The final clash. Garath bellowed, molten cracks racing across its armor. It slammed both forelimbs into the ground, sending another shockwave through the battlefield. The blast knocked Kong to his knees and staggered Hulk. The Earthbreaker charged Hulk, tusks lowered. Hulk sidestepped to the last second, grabbing one tusk with both hands. With a roar of pure fury, he twisted, and the tusk snapped off in his grip. Garath howled in pain, staggering back. Kong seized the moment, leaping onto its back and pounding its skull with both fists. Hulk joined in, driving the broken tusk deep into the molten cracks in Garath's chest. The Earthbreaker convulsed, its roars shaking the burning jungle. With one final combined strike, Hulk's fists and Kong's crushing blow, Garath collapsed. The ground shuddered as the Earthbreaker fell, its molten armor cooling into black stone. The throne decided. Silence fell, broken only by the crackle of fire and the distant rumble of collapsing trees. Kong stood over Garath's corpse, chest heaving, blood matting his fur. Hulk stood opposite him, the broken tusk still in his hand, steam rising from his skin. They locked eyes. No words, no roars. Just the understanding that only one would leave this battlefield as king. Kong beat his chest once, the sound echoing through the ruined jungle. Hulk dropped the tusk, his fists tightening. They charged. The impact was like a meteor strike, the ground splitting beneath them. Fists, claws, and raw power collided in a blur of motion. Trees that had survived the earlier battles toppled. The fires roared higher. Minutes felt like hours. Neither yielded. Then, in a final, bone-shaking exchange, Hulk's fist connected with Kong's jaw at the exact moment Kong's blow landed on Hulk's temple. Both titans staggered. Kong dropped to one knee. Hulk swayed, blood running down his face. With a final, guttural roar, Hulk drove his fist into the ground beside Kong's head, not killing him, but claiming the ground beneath them. Kong's head bowed, not in defeat, but in acknowledgement. The war was over. Epilogue. By dawn, the fires had burned themselves out. The jungle was scarred but alive. Red Hulk stood atop the highest ridge, the rising sun painting his skin in gold and crimson. Below, Kong limped into the mist, disappearing into the deeper wilds. The Alpha was gone. Garath was stone. The throne was claimed. But in the jungle, thrones are never permanent. Somewhere far away, in the shadow of another mountain, something ancient stirred.